Yeah, this is Detlev here, Wake News Radio, Wake News TV, in our UNITEDWESTRIKE radio marathon. The marathon is being conducted, is being broadcasted every second Saturday of a month. And usually we start our UNITEDWESTRIKE radio marathon here from Switzerland. And we had now an hour of German broadcasts within this UNITEDWESTRIKE radio marathon, and now we are starting our English part. Yes, and you can find all relevant information on our website, UNITEDWESTRIKE.com, and everybody who is participating has a blog within there, and my topic today is Escaping World Enslavement. And I'm citing from there. As we all know, we do live in a matrix world created by the few since thousands of years. Especially time is an instrument which distracts humankind from real natural circumstances of life. Since the Roman Empire, and even before then, the Western world has been programmed to believe in sun-oriented time, though we used to live according to moon phases. Julius Caesar, the Roman emperor and world dominator, brought to us this sun-oriented calendar thinking, started the Julian calendar, which was later morphed into the Gregorian, 365 or 366 days, a calendar cycle which is still dominating us in the Western controlled world to this very day, as you all know. And once we are realizing that by consciousness and will-oriented behavior, we could get rid of all this nonsense, we could be starting to use our minds in order to get there where we have our destiny. We will be discussing issues like this with Michael, my guest today. He's also a co-guest and a interview partner here in our Wake News Radio, Wake News TV, an anchor of Wake News Radio and Wake News TV. And we will also be discussing the French presidency by Rothschild. Yeah, Macron is a Rothschild minion. It could become clear who is ruling the matrix world, isn't it? Yeah, and today my guest is Michael, and we will get into talking with him in a minute. In the first hour, in the German part, we were taking the issue of time as one of the enslavement instrument. We should be aware that this agenda is enslaving us. And this is very important for us to identify this as a possible first step to get over this time matrix. And we have lots of information. We've gathered lots of information about this, and it is really very striking how this has been developing over the time. If you remember, I mean, the worst day of the week is Monday, because on Mondays you're supposed to crawl or walk or force yourself to work, and usually you are working until Friday evening, and then you finally hope to get some recreation, some rest, get out of the stress. Obviously, there are always people who have to work on weekends as well and shifts and so forth. But I'm talking about the general mass of people who are experiencing this 5 days a week. In the next couple of days, we think we can get out of it, but it's full of entertainment. We are in a full program. There's a full industry, recreation industry, which is living off us, our energies. And if you look at sports and what have you, or if you're just getting drunk or use drugs in order to forget the usual life. I mean, that's the experience which we are making regarding our societies. Yeah, and that is a very artificial world because, we are not really living with nature if we are living according to the Gregorian calendar, which is dominating the Western world, at least. And this is not clear to most of the people. I mean, they are just living like they do, and they don't question this. And this is one of our main problems, if we don't question things as they run today. And part of our UNITEDWESTRIKE Radio Marathon topics is to discuss these issues and try to talk about ways out of it. And that is something, which we are trying also here in our English-speaking part of Wakeness Radio, Wakeness TV in the UNITEDWESTRIKE Radio Marathon. And I'm looking forward to whether I can meet Michael here. Michael, are you in?
All right. Yes, I'm here. Nice to be here on your show again. It was very interesting what you had to say concerning the calendar, because I was just thinking about this Persian New Year, Nowruz, that is taking place in springtime, in March, April. And that is the actual natural kind of way to start a new year. But since you're that Pope in the Middle Ages, about 1500s, he started to, Gregorius, I think it was, he also started to introduce the new year or to begin the new year in January, which is completely a nonsense, because usually where things are sprouting, springtime is coming and new blossoms, the awakening of nature, that is the proper start for the new year, not in the dead of winter. That's completely idiotic, basically.
Yeah, and you also have the summer and winter time confusion. I mean, there are even differences when summer and winter time start between Europe and America. So this is a complete disorientation strategy, so to bring us out of balance. That's what many people are suspicious of that. Yeah.
Right. That's correct.
Yeah, and obviously there are other methods of calendars. If we're talking about the Mayan calendar and so forth, but we do not want to make a special show on this one. But it is very important to recognize that time, the clock, the hours, the weeks, they are basically enslaving us. If you think about Karen Quintostado, which you will hear later on in the show, she has been fighting for striking on the 15th of a month because tax is due in the States. On the 15th, you have to bring forward your taxes, and bringing forward taxes is one of the ways to do it. But all these dates, all these calendar dates, all these hours, weeks, and what have you, have been artificially created in order to suppress us. Especially, if you think of due dates, you have to pay a certain amount until a certain day. If it's 7 days, 14 days, 21 days, whatever. You always have a date limit, and that is what it is for. It is absolute control over humans. And that is incredible. It is really very, very, very important to realize this and try to abolish this cruel system. What's your point of view?
I wanted to say something final on these clocks. Basically, the invention of the clock in olden times, you had, now today it's by the seconds. In the Middle Ages, you were going by the hours. And in older ages, you were going by the day, according to the sun, So you did not hunt after minutes, you were hunting after hours, basically. And that gives us a lot more freedom. Now everything is very tightly scheduled, and we have to run for the minutes or for the seconds even, which is pathetic. I mean, it's completely putting us in a prison, in a straitjacket of time. And when you can compare it, in olden times, what all the clock is a symbolization of the planets, how they circle around the Earth, and it's all very calm and in a long breath kind of situation. And now through these negative occult influences, they set us with the seconds, which is completely unnatural. Our body functions don't correspond with seconds. They correspond with hours.
Exactly. Even our heartbeat. I mean, many people said, well, it is according to heartbeat, but that's not true, because the heart beats different in certain situations. So it's not a constant heartbeat as such, maybe on average, but from time to time your heartbeat changes. If you do sports and so forth, I mean, your heart beats faster. And there are other things or other reasons why your heart is behaving differently. So it's according to what is needed. That is actually what we should look for. We should live in absolute harmony with nature, with everything what is happening in nature, and that is not the case anymore with the clock work, if you want to. But it's a very important issue, because nobody really talks about this, and I found a fantastic video. Unfortunately, it's in German. Explaining the situation with the time and clocks and so forth. But that's not our main topic as such. We are open to discussing many subjects here, especially as we are talking now here in our international part, in English speaking. But we want to discuss also the French election, which has just taken place. A few days ago, we had a new French president, Emmanuel Macron, who was elected versus his contract, the Marine Le Pen. Yeah, maybe you've been researching a little bit about that. I had some shows here in German about this. Maybe you could elaborate a little bit your thoughts, what has happened in France. Michael, what do you think?
Well, he's just a candidate of the system. He's just a Rothschild candidate, and he's very much succeeding in that way. And he was tricking the society into it against the lesser evil. Le Pen, Jean-Marie Le Pen. People were fear-mongering about her, that she will, lead this France out of the European Union and out of the euro. That would create chaos, but in reality, what will come, that Macron will create chaos, in a worse way than Jean-Marie Le Pen would have been creating. You see, in the course of 1.5 years, we have civil war in France. Unfortunately, that's my prediction, what's going to happen in France. Because as soon as they find out that he's a neocon, which he is, his connections show that. He's also a Freemason. In French, you say franc-maçon, F-R-A-N-C, maçon, with M-A-C-O-N. He is a candidate well prepared by his wife, which is basically his handler. She was handling him since he was a boy. And he's well prepared by the Jesuits. He has a Jesuit background. He was going to a very elite Jesuit school in France, in the province. Then, after this affair sort of came up with his teacher, then he moved to Paris, and from then on, of course, he was under the care of these elitist indoctrination schools.
Yeah, very true, and it's amazing. I mean, it sounds a little bit like a pedophile story, because when he was 15, he fell in love with his female teacher, Brigitte. Yeah. And she was at that time she was 40 years old, 40 and 15. I mean, you learn about this. That this is very I don't know, a very delicate issue if you have a man who would be 40 and a 15-year-old girl. I mean, imagine what people would say. But this is the other way around. I mean, this is a little bit strange, isn't it? Yeah, and there's even an Italian psychiatrist. He's saying that he's judging over this Macron guy, that he most probably is a psychopath due to his biography, his way of getting to power by this lady. Maybe she has been influencing him most probably severely. So it's a pedophile story, if you want to. I mean, if you look at it from this point of view, don't you think?
Well, it's not only the lady. She definitely played her part in the whole setup. But all the schools, these indoctrination places, these Jesuit college, actually, he was going to school with that lady's daughter. That was her classmate.
Amazing.
And yeah. So he should have been falling in love with her daughter, but that's happened the other way around. It's not impossible. I don't make it a big deal out of it, because sometimes these things karmically can happen. It's not impossible. Yeah. Even it makes him look a little bit sympathetic in some viewers' eyes, but nevertheless, what is more important to me is what she did to him, and that she was acting as a handler, and that she was connecting him to these circles, so these power pseudo-elite circles, and was training him and giving him the right spin to function and resonate in that direction.
Yeah. And he's clearly connected to the Rothschilds because he was working for Rothschild. As a matter of fact, he started also, in think tanks, and most probably people watched him there, how he develops, and then he got an offer from the Rothschild Bank in France, and later on he even became a partner of Rothschild at a very young age. I mean, imagine. That's is an incredible career, isn't it? It can only be done by personal influence, maybe even bloodline related. Who knows?
Yeah, he appeared from nowhere, except from being, the Minister of Economy, I think it was, a couple of years back. Other than that, he was just appearing out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And, in the background, and he was also creating that law, that French law against this... that the workers have to give up their rights, and that the employer get more rights. That kind of, I forgot the name of that law. There's a special name of it, of this Egyptian, of this Palestinian lady. She has her name, and it's El Khomri. I think it is the law. The loi El Khomri, and that is that law that the rights were diminished of the general workers, basically. And they can throw them out easy, hire and fire policies, that kind of thing. Yeah. Not as severe as in the US, but going in that direction. And he was the father of that law. Yeah. Together with Emmanuel Valls. And now this Emmanuel Valls is also working together with him. And he's appearing as a neutral candidate. Yep. Now working together with Emmanuel Macron. It seems like the banksters now get together and fool the public again. It's a big show, a big stage show it's a puppet show.
Absolutely, so, but it's written in your face. I mean, imagine. I mean, they even publish this in the Matrix media, in print and TV and so forth in France, that he's been working for a Rothschild bank, and this is dealt as being something completely normal, like you work at the next door bakery sort of thing. But it is so obvious. I mean, they're handling the name of Rothschild now in a way which is really astonishing. I mean, usually those guys work behind the curtains and pulled the strings from there. But nowadays, I mean, they just go in the public, in the open, and and using Rothschild as a positive thing, as a positive background. Can you imagine? I mean, this is what is the matter with the French people? What do you think?
Well, I don't know. I mean, some people see the Rothschilds or the Rothschilds as somebody that has good wine to offer. They don't see anything else than that. And, that there's a bank, they know that, but that's as far as it goes, because they've been brainwashed through all the media, the mass media, and the mainstream media. Only those people that are awake and a little bit do research, they do some research on the back, they find out about these connections and about this, about these, the dominance and what's going on in the background to subdue the people. That comes from these circles. They start to realize it before. Well, it's a big staged show, and they've been indoctrinated by the media, by the schools, by everything. And so they don't realize it right away. It takes a bit of research. It doesn't come automatically. It's not on autoplanet, autopilot. You don't have an autopilot kind of reconnaissance of the reality. That doesn't go. You have to get active to find out what's going on. That sounds funny. That situation is funny. How can that be? People have to think. Thinking is a process which makes us human, and we have to question situations. In the UNITEDWESTRIKE, don't ask why, don't comply, and so forth. It is questioning. Ask why. Why do I ask? Socrates was asking why, and he was giving. He was questioning the situation, and his questions were so straightforward that he was a threat to the system.
Yeah.
So you have to question, and you have to ask, and not a lot of people today are in that position that they question. They take everything. If you tell them bananas grow on the moon and are being harvested there, they believe it if it comes in the mainstream media.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the dependence on information. I mean, like a consumer product. I mean, information is being looked at as a bring to me issue, but rather it's a get and fetch point of thing that we really have to be looking for the information. But you can only do this if you are in doubt of the information you usually consume. If you have any doubts about the reality, or if you have any doubts about the sincerity of your government and corporations and so forth, I mean, only then you have the impulse to do something else than what they give you as a consumer product, and to get to this very point, to become conscious, it's the hardest part, and it is something which cannot be achieved without getting the impulse from yourself, within you. So if you tell somebody, you tell me once in a while about people, about which you talk to, and you are surprised that they still living in this sort of matrix and are not really seeing the picture, the big picture behind it. And you're sometimes asking yourself, why is that the case? I'm telling him all the time, all the news, all the information, and all the things he should have a look at. But they don't do it. They just trust the system. And this is very disappointing. And I occasionally tell you that it is probably because of they don't want to mess up their world. They don't want to get in confusion with himself or themselves. So that's most probably the case, don't you think?
Well, I think, yes, that's the case. But it's even worse than that. His thought patterns, I call them the stamped people.
Yeah,
they are stamped. They cannot think. They have to think in certain patterns, which are preset, pre-established patterns, which are being placed in their subconscious thinking, and by these media, and only those patterns are being activated. It's not actually thinking. It is simply, I would call it, it's not the process of thinking that goes to the philosophy and Steiner, the real thinking, the living thinking, and so forth, what that means. That maybe now goes too far today for this discussion.
Yeah.
But what I would say is that they're simply resonating. It is simply, when they think something, it is not an actual thinking. It's sort of like a pre-established memory that's being now drawn up to their surface of consciousness. It's already pre-programmed, and simply the light bulb goes on, and then they see that pre-thought and preset concepts which have been placed and planted into their subconscious. When you really start thinking, then you go beyond the box. This invisible box, which these people have, or a straitjacket, I could also name it, which is around these people, and they're actually not being able to, to think properly in a proper manner. The definition of thinking is that you have a concept of access to the concept world, to this universality. So what the Greeks were telling archetypos. That means these concepts of thoughts which are independent and basically beings which are interconnected, and that you have access to them, that they don't have. They're simply, it's like a fast food. If I compare it to real food and fast food, they have these fast food menus in their head, and they can only draw from those fast food menus.
Yeah, and they're addicted to that because it's always combined with an easy solution. Usually there's the usual bad guy is Russia or Putin or whoever. So that's an easy one. Or Kim Jong-un, the chap from North Korea, or things like that. So they are black-white situations. So they don't really offer any opportunity to thinking about what they are saying and transmitting and broadcasting. We do this a little different. I mean, we are always asking our audience to think about what we are saying and not to just believe, but rather, find out whether this is true or not. And we try to provide the according information if possible. But now we are discussing exactly what has happened. As I mentioned here in the beginning of the show, with the time. I mean, at a specific moment in time, the system created schools in a way of indoctrination. That was the main purpose, not broaden the experience and develop the positive human mankind properties which everybody has. It is a sort of a propaganda indoctrination institution, the schooling system. You've been elaborating about this as well in the last show, I guess. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Last German, so not in English. In the last German show which you've done. Yeah. Right, so maybe you can give us your input on that.
Well, time and money is the straitjacket which they use as a system of enslavement. That's what they use, time and money. When you think about the olden times, where the tribal situations, where people had structures, tribal structures, nobody could tell you that you have to go to work 8 o'clock and do be under foreign control and do things. Basically for one boss, do act and work kind of situation that didn't happen. You could be the master of your day, so to speak, and
Yep.
that is what makes us sick. A lot of people get sick because they're not the master of their life. They're not the master of their day. And Steiner mentions that it is enough to work 3 hours a day for our physical needs. That is enough, and especially today with our industrialization, what we have with all the machines doing the jobs, 3 hours is more than enough to provide our necessary material needs. So, if you organize it correct, even in the 60s, it was propaganda films in the U.S. They said, when they introduced these big harvesters, these harvest machines.
Yeah.
They said, in the year 2000, people they work only 3 hours a day. With all this industrialization, with the machinery, they can easily do that. So it's their own propaganda, which you can see that something must be wrong. Because the whole setup of the work is to keep us busy, not to think about the basics of our existence.
Oh, absolutely.
It is nicely placed, so we have no chance, no time to think. And with the two systems, as I mentioned, money and time. And about the money situation, I don't think we have to talk about that today. But the money situation and the money setup is the most destructive way of the interhuman activity in a solidarian way, and of a brotherly and sisterly way. When you run after the money, you have to give up that brotherly and sisterly and that kind of benevolent picture of your fellow human beings. You simply replace that with running after money. And then you lose all your social valuable connections. And it is clearly visible when you study the civilization, what took place and how it all happened. And you can see it even in ancient societies. It started definitely in the Roman society. It was very much prevalent there. And even before, it goes back to the Babylonian situation, times.
Right. And, you wonder, city children usually don't even know how a cow looks like or a horse. So they occasionally may even eat meat, but they don't know where this is coming from. And they have lost complete connection to nature, to the living, to farming, to everything. Most of the people are not living off the land anymore. It's completely different than it used to be in Middle Ages. Isn't that also one of the issues?
Yeah, they would even eat shoestrings if it comes from McDonald's and prepared in a special way. So it doesn't surprise me, because these people are being made. How shall I say? They have been it's called a dehumanification that takes place, where they are not really themselves. They're sort of made living zombies. When you think about the real idea in our evolution, how God has meant us, and as a creator created the world and created human beings as an entity that can think, that can question, that can interact in solidarity, that has this benevolence in his ideas, this positive approach towards fellow human beings, and not in opposition in cooperation with them. That is natural. That is the tribal, basically, the tribal society, even though it was more on an instinctive level at times, in a group soul kind of situation. Now we can lift it even up and develop it further to an individual kind of situation where individuals get together, they respect each other in a brotherly, sisterly way, and work together in solidarity. It's even a higher level than what was there before on a tribal level, because it was on a more instinctive kind of setup those days,
Yeah,
and
we were more connected to nature then than we are today. That's clear.
right.
So, and this is also the buildup of huge cities and conglomerations where people are really forced to live in very poor conditions, and the cities usually are overcrowded. The world or the earth is not, but the cities and certain conglomerations are completely overcrowded and not worth living, only for those who can afford nice rents, nice apartments and condominiums and houses and so forth. But the common man basically is completely imprisoned in huge and big cities. And this is also on purpose, it seems.
Right. I think we should go back towards this living in the countryside, because that's the natural way. That is the way we're together with nature. Everybody should have, for their proper soul development and for their proper spiritual development, they should live in nature. They should have contact with nature, because in the old initiation rites, through nature, you got in touch with spiritual spheres. The old shaman way, it is going through natures. Through nature, through the plants, through the bushes, through the sun, through the moon, and all these forces. They were in touch with nature. And when you live in a city, you're completely sterilized. Basically, you are numbed down towards this natural impulse. And you can imagine when you go through the forest, when you have little bit problems and something in life is bothering you, then you take a nice walk in the forest. Later, you come out charged, full of energy,
Absolutely.
And half of the problem is already gone.
In the cities, especially, you're being tortured by, all these waves and, low frequencies, by the antennas, which you find everywhere on top of the roofs, right? So they additionally make living in cities, in big cities especially, very, very unpleasant. So this has to be definitely a way out. I mean, we have to find ways to get back to nature. This is very, very important. And even the native Indians, the native Americans do tell us. I mean, they still live on prairie land, not all of them, unfortunately, but they still have connection to nature. But it's getting harder for them as well, because they're being forced out of their culture as well by Western influence. So this is a very, very worrying development. But the only way, and we discussed this earlier as well, is we should not go to the streets and fighting in the streets with those uniformed minions working for the banksters, called police or whatever. But we should rather try to change our way of living, which can be done by everyone. As we say at UNITEDWESTRIKE, don't buy, don't comply, ask why. I mean, don't buy at major outlets, major globalist outlets. Don't necessarily use banks and insurances if you don't need it. And also don't comply. Just don't do whatever they are telling you to do, or the system is telling you to do, but rather question it. Ask why. So make it harder for them. Make it harder for the system to get you, and try to build up your own more independent life. What are your thoughts about this, Michael?
Well, it's clear. I mean, these people that set up the laws is that corrupt elite, that decadent, tyrannic, tenebristic elite. Tenebre comes from Latin of dark, of shadow. Basically, they are set up the rules, and that they don't comply with their own rules, and they do it to enslave the rest of the people. So you have to know why there are laws. I mean, it's common sense. If you have common sense, you don't need any laws, because your own moral, ethical sphere will tell you what to do. Your own consciousness will tell you what to do. So you don't need any laws when you have common sense. And when you respect the fellow human beings, I mean, when you respect the creation and the universe, you don't need any laws. And basically, laws you create yourself in an ethical way, in harmony with the rest of the universe, of course, not in opposition. So that's what they always say. If everybody creates their own laws, it is a chaos. But no, when you're in harmony with the universe and with your fellow human beings, you don't create your laws of conduct. Basically, it is basically it's all fits in very harmoniously, and these people, I find it very naive. People don't question who makes the laws, for what purpose, and whom does it serve. You know, that is the questions these people should ask. And so since I was a little boy, I always questioned these kind of behaviors. One doesn't do that, one does that, and one eats like this, and one takes the fork in that hand, and that kind of thing. Yeah, I questioned it. Why is it so? And what purpose? For what purpose, you know? And with that attitude, then people can reach a healthy way of realizing what makes this world. And people shouldn't be so naive to take it as granted. These current situations, they're being placed and planted and deliberately put there by some people which have some intentions in the back, some malicious intentions a lot of times. And you know that these in today society and in the past, always you could see the malicious kind of power hungry people. They were visible. Now they're invisible. And since they made themselves invisible, people think they don't exist, and everybody's there and fine, and there is democracy, and there is the human rights and that kind of thing. That is only staged show. To numb down the people, and they should realize it's only stage, it's a game.
Yeah.
And we have the same situation like in the Middle Ages. Some underdeveloped, mostly, I would say, some underdeveloped group of people backwards in their moral development and malicious in their soul intentions, and they are creating the rules of the world. They run this world, unfortunately.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I mean, we all know this in the meantime, and most of our listeners most probably do know this as well. But it is very necessary to spread the news, to spread this information. And everybody is welcome to spread our podcasts or archives or link the people to our websites and so forth, because we are in this United We Strike radio marathon, and we will be having more to come after this hour with us here from Switzerland. We will hand over to our next host, Matt, after the top of the hour. So we will be having lots of interesting talks there and guests as well. Well, this is a little bit disappointing for everybody because, we don't see the success yet, which we're all expecting. I mean, how wonderful would this be if millions of people in the world already had the same sort of common knowledge as we do, and see the world as it is, as a matrix, as something which has to be changed in order to get back to the origin, and so forth. So this is a little disappointing and a little bit frustrating. What are your thoughts about this?
Yeah, in a way, you're right. Another way that I see also a positive kind of development of this issue. I see a lot of communities that people that say we create new communities, we live together in a different way. We are sort of a couple of families that buy a piece of land or create a new communal life with different paradigms, and there is activities going on a small scale, which you shouldn't underestimate. It's there, and I think if the crisis is increasing, these circles will be taking over and becoming more predominant, where people again start small scales. They start up small scale cities. They have new paradigms of living together. They discuss in a more democratic way, and you can overlook the situation. It is small kind of communities. You overlook, everybody knows each other. And that is important, because if you have an anonymous kind of power grid, then you cannot question it, and you cannot overlook and control what's going on. And you should be able to see if somebody is misusing or somebody is morally not fit. In a small circles, you can find out very easily if somebody grabs too much material assets, and it's in a small community. Then you see he's collecting all these things, and then people in the olden times are getting together to say, hey, what's going on? This fellow is now grabbing everything, and it's not correct. So the people are getting together, and he washed his head, basically.
Yeah.
So if that is taking place in a small scale, and that's not being put in a newspaper, these small activities now, but they're happening in the background. Sure. Nevertheless, we have to be aware that there is a war against the people, against the common people, going on from these death cult members, and you call them the DIMS, the dominant insane minority, and they're megalomaniacs. Yeah. We have to clearly see that. We know that. And they have set up a system of control where they made everybody to follow their rules. And we have to simply, as the slogan says, don't comply. We simply have to, don't go. The thing is, we shouldn't go for work under these negative paradigms, and we should start an alternative circle. That is what we can do. That is not a violent. That is not a violent kind of revolution. That is simply a small, slow scale, a kind of evolution that can take place in a spiritual, positive sense.
Yeah, and this is the right word. We are at the end of our part of the show, Michael, and we will be heading towards the top of the hour. We'll give the microphone over to Matt Navarro in the US. I thank you very much, Michael, for your thoughts and your input here in our UNITEDWESTRIKE Radio Marathon from Switzerland.
Yeah, it was nice to be with you today.
Okay, and we will be having interesting shows. Also, as of June, there may be some changes, which Karen may talk about later on, at least giving us some hints what is happening. Please be aware of that, and thanks for listening. Yeah, and we will be listening now to Neil Fox's F.K. the Fed. I and we as a team do thank our listeners for listening and tuning in and supporting us. And we will see each other, latest in June. Right. This is Detlev of Awakeness Radio, Awakeness TV. See you. Bye-bye.
Join UnitedWeStrike.com radio on the second Saturday of every month for our live international radio marathon. Don't buy, don't comply, ask why.
Precisely why we have to say, the Fed. Now, not too long ago, there was a president who tried. He was about to stick it to the lousy Fed. He made some legal tender, silver-backed in all its splendor. It's unfortunate he ended up dead. Clinton, Bush, Barack Obama, Carter, Reagan, and McCain. We argue who's the best until we drop. But whoever is elected, it all comes out the same till we see that it's the Fed we need to stop. Hey, 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 hey. The Fed. Hey, 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 hey. The Fed. We need a president with balls, no matter white or black or female. Someone more than just another talking head. They have to stand up for our rights. They better read the Constitution when they hear the people cry, F the Fed. So tell your children's children, if we're still around to tell, how depressions were created by a few. How the people lived and suffered while the candidates debated till the people knew exactly what to do. Yeah. Hey, 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 hey. The Fed. Hey, 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 hey. The Fed.